Good morning, social studies students. It's Miss Roberge here, and I'm going to talk to you about the Culture and Economics worksheet. So if you'll remember, this was handed out to you by Mr. Firestone on March 13th. It was expected that it was completed by Monday, March 16th, but if kids had trouble with it, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help. So let's go through it together and we'll try to get it done. All right, let's read it first, all right? I think that's an important first step. We're just going to read through it, and we can see what it has to say about the Civil War. So we should probably look at the title first. That's a good idea. The title is Culture and Economics. The North and South were different culturally and economically. The fertile soil and warm climate made the South ideal for large farms and crops like tobacco and cotton. Agriculture was profitable, and few Southerners saw a need for industrial development. Most people lived on farms. Social status was important, and with 3 tiers of social status, aristocracy, middle class, and slaves, everyone knew his or her place. The northern soil and climate favored small farms rather than large plantations, and industry grew rapidly, fueled by abundant natural resources, which just means they had a lot of natural resources. Large cities were established and many people lived in urban areas. The North was a land of much opportunity and entrepreneurism. Most immigrants settled in the North. So in the North, there were people setting up businesses. Protective tariffs, or important duties, on manufactured goods, duties are taxes, were a point of dissension between the North and the South. Since the South was mostly agricultural, Southern states did not need or want high tariffs. They argued that high tariffs forced them to pay more for goods and subsidized factories in the North. Northern industries were in favor of high tariffs in order to protect their factories and laborers from cheap European products. Northerners argued that tariffs protected American jobs. The tariffs were used to fund public projects, but that was a point of conflict as well. From 1789 to 1845, the North received 5 times more money from tariffs than the South. More than twice as many lighthouses were built in the North as in the South, and Northern states received twice the funding of Southern states for coastal defense. So we can see that there were very big differences between the North and the South during the Civil War, or pre-Civil War, we should say. Let's look at the questions that have to go with this. What is a synonym for tariffs as used in the text? So that question, tariffs are something that we all know a lot about. Tariffs are simply taxes. You hear about taxes in the news. You hear about it from your parents. They're a fact of life for the American citizen, and they do get us things such as schools and roads. So although sometimes they may seem useless, they truly aren't. Let's look at B. Define dissension as it is used in the text. So they're talking about the North and the South and what they disagreed upon. And they disagreed about the tariffs, and it caused dissension, meaning it caused unrest. It caused them to be in some kind of an argument. They did not agree. So it means disagreement. Let's go back to C. C says, explain the meaning of subsidized as it is used in the text. The text says, they argued that high tariffs forced them to pay for more goods and subsidized factories in the North. So the South was saying that if they had to pay more for goods, they were going to essentially be helping the Northern factories and offering them some kind of support. They were going to be helping to support the Northern factories. So in this case, it means helping to support. So remember, I'm writing these answers very short, but Miss Willard put at the top of the page that they should be written in complete sentences. So if you need to fill in some gaps here, please make sure that you do that. The directions were very clear, and I know you all know what a complete sentence is. Let's go to question number 2. List 5 differences between the North and South based on the text. The entire text is filled with examples of this. Okay, so let's take a look. To begin with, the South has fertile soil and a warm climate. I see that right in this line. But when I go down to this paragraph here about the North, and this paragraph here is really about the South, I see that they had a different kind of climate. It favored small farms rather than large plantations, versus the South climate that favored big farms. Agriculture was profitable. There were large farms and cash crops. So that is one difference that we can write down. For the North, soil and climate support small farms. But in the South, soil and climate for large plantations. All right, let's look for another one. We need to have 5. That's 1, right? Large cities were established and many people lived in urban areas in the North. Versus Southerners, they mostly lived in agriculture. Look at, most people lived on farms versus many people lived in urban areas. That's a difference. I'm going to go make sure I write that down right now. People in urban areas. People live in urban areas. People live on farms. All right, let's go find some more. The North was a land of much opportunity and entrepreneurism. Many immigrants settled here. Let's see, maybe that means that a lot of immigrants didn't settle in the South. If there were a lot of cities in the North, that's where people would be coming in to find jobs. So I think that's a thing we can put for the differences. Had many immigrants. And then in the South, less immigrants. Okay? Another important part, as it's written here, is that the northern industries wanted the high tariffs, but we know that the South did not. They did not want it, nor did they need it. So we should add that to our grid. Wanted high tariffs. I just cleared it off to make some space. Did not want or need tariffs. All right, that means we just have to find one more difference. We can see in the last paragraph that the North received a lot more money from tariffs. And therefore, more things were built, such as lighthouses. They also received a lot more money for coastal defense. So that's another big difference between the two. North received more money. For coastal defense. Oops. Excuse me. That was not correct. And then the South they received less money. Please remember, I know I have terrible, messy handwriting. Thank you all for sticking with me. I'm hoping that by talking through this as well, you'll still understand what's going on. Reach out to me if you don't, though, and you need me to slow down and be more neat. Most of you are pretty used to the way I work and the way I write now. And I'm depending on that at this moment. But reach out, because you know me. I'm open to feedback. Let's look at the last question we have to answer. Number 3. How did economic differences between the North and South contribute to the Civil War? Cite evidence from the text to support your answer. Economic differences refer to the different ways that they spent their money. So remember, the South is focused on agriculture, on farming, on keeping the things within the family. That's what that word aristocracy refers to. Social status, if you had money, they wanted you to keep the money. They weren't big on industries. The North, however, wanted industry. They were welcoming immigrants to work in places. There was a lot of opportunity, and they wanted the government to establish things such as tariffs that would help support them. So you can see that these major differences immediately contribute to some of the issues between the North and the South. They both wanted to get what was right for their own economies, but their own economies were very different from one another. So it was hard to form one country and make one set of rules for two totally different economies. So one thing I want you to think about when you're answering this question, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what to write. I want you to think about it. One of the issues with the Civil War was the debate over slavery and whether or not we should have slaves. So the South thought, yeah, we should have slaves because we need those slaves to work on our farms. Whereas the North didn't have that need. So think about it. The slaves were depended on in the South, which doesn't make it right, but the economy of the South did depend on them working at that time. But the North did not have that need. So when they started to have their arguments over states' rights, and slavery was one of the issues they argued over in that regard, they didn't know if the federal government, that is the United States government, should be allowed to decide if slavery should be legal or if each individual state should be allowed to decide that. How do you think the South would have voted on that? A southern state. A southern state that's economy depended on slaves. In the North, the economy depended on business, industry, and immigrants who worked there. I want you to think about all of that information and why this would have led to tension, why the needs of the two areas were different, and why this would have led to tension at the start of the Civil War. All right? Think about that. I know you guys have it in you. You can answer this question. You got this. All right, my dears. I hope you're all doing well. I will talk to you all soon. And don't forget to reach out to me if you need anything. Bye.